but
Okay.
I don't know how many of you know of me, but I am the person that was responsible for the dissemination of the internet back in 1993. A lot of people don't know that it was an African American firm that first was tasked to basically distribute the internet around the world. And I was the head of marketing at the time. My background, front end of this, I'm originally from Brooklyn, New York. Um, Went to school in Denver, University of Denver, and then went to graduate school at Columbia University with an MBA in finance, and then postgraduate from University of Michigan. I was a banker with JT uh, Morgan Trust. I was the second African American hired in the international department. Stayed there 5 years and went on to Deutsche Union Bank, where I became head of international finance for Deutsche Union Bank. Most of my life, I've been a consultant to some of the most successful African American businesses in the country. One of my clients is Dr. Lonnie Johnson, the inventor of the Super Soaker water gun.
Mr. White, could you sit back just a little bit so we can see your face? Yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good. That's
I
good.
was hoping that would, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you okay.
Okay.
I can see
So,
you too.
yeah, I've been with Lonnie Johnson for about 25 years. Helped him get through a period when he transitioned from toys into energy. Um, I've been an advisor to one of the largest owners of radio stations in the United States. Um, my success story is I closed the largest deal ever signed as a subcontractor to AT&T in its history, and that was in the 90s. Um, and then I continually basically supported what was happening in the minority business community. So I just, uh, the interesting thing about this period, and I really want to be honest with everybody. Interesting thing about this period is I came through affirmative action, and a lot of my friends did too. And if it wasn't for affirmative action, um, a lot of the CEOs, the Black CEOs, men and women, would not have had positions in these companies. And even this week, when you hear of a four-star general being let go because he's Black, and that's basically what Trump says. He's Black, so we got to let him go. And that really kind of showed me that where we are today, as the gentleman spoke before, is we're going backwards right now. And the questions I get because I'm in Washington and people call me all the time to say, Al, what's happening and what can we do about this? At this point, I think we have to continually put pressure on the administration and basically fight within our communities to get protest. My concern that I have is, the old adage, when you push somebody to the wall, they have a tendency to want to come over you. And they're pushing a lot of people here in DC and across the country in economic situations that are horrible when it comes to taking care of their families. A lot of worry is going on here in DC, as well as across the country. My first contract when I left banking was with USAID. And there's nothing that AID is doing to hurt anybody but help people all over the world. And when I hear about the types of actions that the administration is taking about closing AID, I just wonder about the people who are sitting there in these countries who are not getting health care, who are not getting food, who are not getting aid. And that's just a lack of sensitivity. And then here in DC, we talk about everything. We talk about what's going on with the other agencies, NIH. Um, I'm really sensitive. I just got back from speaking at Johnson C. Smith College in Charlotte for Black History Month and talking to the provost. They're wondering, how are they going to sustain themselves over the long run now if they start losing some of the funding from the federal government, which has happened in the agriculture department. As you may know, some land grant schools in agriculture have lost a lot of money as it related to agricultural studies and PhD studies and doctoral studies. So, and I know you guys out there also are worried about what's going to go on because, you know, in my lifetime, I never thought I would go through this period of time. And it's another fight that we're going to have to put up. So the fact about the internet and where we are with AI, I was in a meeting yesterday to talk about if there was going to be a digital divide similar to what's going on with the internet, where it doesn't go into our communities, doesn't go into the black and rural and major cities. And I really believe, after the conversation yesterday, that AI is going to have a similar situation in our communities, that we're going to be restricted on the use of AI getting to our communities. And that basically relates to, you know, having the technology and having the resources to do things. So I don't want to take up too much more time. Hopefully you'll have some questions, but we're here in Washington, we're really in a real fight right now. And I'm hoping that we can come out of this gaining something, not losing anything at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. White. We appreciate your comments and descriptions that way. It's amazing, but you know, I mean, this is an important time. It's an important time, and it's important for us to consider what our next steps to AI.
Right.
And so, you know, because I mean, it's an amazing strategy of development and direction that if we consider if what AI might offer for our future that way. And so, you know, and you since you have experience with the internet but I mean, this is the one ground consideration from a standpoint because it's my theory that during the 2008 meltdown of economies, if more companies would have considered doing business internationally, it would not have had an impact on us. And so now is an important time for our community to look at doing business internationally. And what does that mean? That means, you know, you have internet. You can go outside of America to do business and cultivate your economy. And, you know, and how to do that from a standpoint of relationships, how to do it from the standpoint of communities, how to do it from the standpoint of industries, you know, what it means and what it could represent for the future of our economy and community.
No, I absolutely agree with that. And because most of my early career was in international, I get a lot of people coming to me now asking about helping them in
Mhm.
basically understanding the market. I always believed that there was an area where African Americans and Africans could have come together earlier because they needed the types of experience and support we have. And now
Yeah,
it's forcing us to really look at that option. And
yeah,
it calls, you know, people going to you know, to Ghana, going to, you know, other countries, Kenya, and seeking out partnerships. And in Ghana, you can get a citizenship as long as you're African American.
right, right,
So
right.
that's going on. There's got to be other options. And when I spoke with the students at Johnson C. Smith, I told them, all of them, go get your passport. Make
Yeah,
sure you have a passport.
yeah,
Keep
yeah.
it
So
in your house.
that's exactly right. You know, I really, I'm excited about our conversations, and I look forward to us dialoguing from a workshop component where we can really start to delve into strategies, some issues of obstacles that we need to overcome, because there are communities now, as a collective community all over the world. There are pockets and communities of people that, you know, I mean, and if like here, I'm in North Carolina and you're in DC. Now, the ports here in North Carolina, they are sufficient. And I mean, I've met with the governor a few times, or previous governor. I met with the current governor before. But you know, the options are, I mean, in most communities and cities, the prime economy is trade, trade, bringing products into the area region, pushing products out. And so, you know, your from the standpoint of the internet, what do you perceive as we can talk about what our obstacles are at a prescribed time. And if you will, make sure you put your contact information in our chat so I can look back for you and we can talk about that. Okay, race for the net. When African Americans control the internet and what happens now. Oh wow. Oh, you're already there.
No. So let me just give you a bit of history about AI. So AI was developed in the 1980s. AI was stagnant for almost 10 years because it didn't have a way to train the computers. Not until you got to having the database that the internet had could you basically train computers on information. And that's where most of the information now comes from. It comes from the internet database. The problem that people are seeing right now is most of AI has exhausted the internet database, and the question is what that next database is going to be.
Can I
Good.
intersect? Well, that was a very good analogy of what happened, and thanks for that information. As a reminder, I used to I don't remember your company's name. All I remember about it is that you maintain the registry, IP registry.
Right.
I dealt with you many times.
Okay. So the company's name exists today, Network Solutions.
Network Solutions. Okay. I
So
cannot remember.
Network Solutions name, it was founded by African Americans.
Right.
Sold in 1995 at a ridiculous price.
Right.
But eventually sold 5 years later for $21 billion.
Right.
And
so I think Network Solutions is definitely an example of how successful an African American company in that space can be, but at the same time, it also reflects, I guess, the attitude of the overall business community, because I do remember there being some resentment by some companies that a company founded by African Americans was in charge of the IP address registry. That was an issue. So how did I would assume that you guys also understood that, and how did you deal with it?
Well, in the early stages, and I mentioned in the book, we couldn't raise any capital. We got this contract from the National Science Foundation for 5 years, and we couldn't charge a fee for the internet addresses. So we couldn't monetize any of our business. And after having expenses to run the internet of about $2.5 million a year and only taking in $1 million from the federal government, that's why the company was forced to sell. The story about the history of Network Solutions has never fully been told, and that's why I wrote the book. And I'm in the process of trying to do a documentary, because this is a story that I think our community as well as the world needs to know, that if it wasn't for the technology that was developed by an African American company, we wouldn't have 5 billion people around the world using the internet.
That is absolutely right. And I have run into people who were only people who were in the industry a long time ago understand that. But I've run into people who ask the question, what happened? And I'm glad you wrote the book, because none of us really knew the inside story of what happened.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's very good. And just one more comment about AI. You're right. I worked with AI I was in networking. So one of the first applications of AI was for databases of networking environments, network management in particular, monitoring the logs. Because whenever a problem could occur, then you could get hundreds of thousands of log entries that would appear on a screen. And there's no one human being who could handle that. But, and you couldn't hire enough people to monitor them either. But with AI, it could just filter out so quickly only the things that a network engineer needed to look at. But it couldn't be confined to that, obviously, because, like you said, there was a void of other databases or other applications for AI. And what's ahead of us now, we regenerative AI can pose a significant threat for all of us if we don't start to educate ourselves on what is going on in that area.
Let me just give you one example, which I'm real concerned about and I write about in the book. If AI is used to identify communities based on what is in the data, can you imagine the information that would be fed in there that would talk about us and talk about what we should be doing and can't be doing? And the example I use is they could go in and feed in information. Now, the person that feeds the information controls what the results are really. So
Right.
if they fed negative information about our communities into an AI model that says this particular street in this particular town, because they have 80% African Americans, they shouldn't be thinking about going to college. You're wasting money on them. And that's the type of decisions that AI can make. Or either about Social Security. Who should get Social Security? Who should get, benefits? So that's what they're going to try to use AI for, is to basically provide information on who should get services and who should not. And that's the thing. It's a great technology, but I think there's a lot of problems with it. And we got to be involved in helping people make decisions as it relates to it.
See, but we should be involved from a grassroots perspective, not an
Right.
administration.
No, we got him. We got him.
Yeah, because I want you to look at what your schedule looks like for the next 2, 3 days. If we could take about either from a 2 to 5 hour time frame, and we put that out there, and Thursday, Friday looks great for me. But you don't have to make a decision about it this second. But if you could take a look, because we'll put it out there for some people to evaluate. We can talk about it, and we can come down to some real action items that we can step into. Some maximum, because these are important areas, and I really appreciate all of you being online with us, Mr. Pfeiffer. Mr. Michael is coming up next, but Mr. Pfeiffer, you'll be after him, and we are really talking and plowing into some discussion matters that will add great value for us in the coming days. And so a lot to talk about.
Can I ask Harold a question?
Sure.
So Harold, you're in the construction industry. So are you feeling that you're going to be impacted what's going on right now in government contracting?
Referring to me, Harold?
Yeah.
No, actually, I'm an air traffic controller.
Okay.
This is great. Okay, I'm sorry. I appreciate you all being online, and thank you, Mr. White, for being with us. These are, and I'm appreciative. These kind of conversations can go far. Now, this time right here, it's gonna mean that we got to get close. We can't be so critical of each other. We have to support one another, and we have to find ways to collaborate and come up with now, I was talking with a presenter earlier, and she was saying that she had a pretty comfortable opportunity or job, and what happened was that she had a new manager, and the new manager came in and was incredibly critical of her. Incredibly critical to the point where, man, I can't work like this, and I'm gonna have to give another gig. But what it did for her was it made her evaluate Okay, I've got to really clue down. And sometimes pressure makes us better. Pressure makes us better. So if we can use the pressure that we might find ourselves under to be the better people that we can be. I'll tell you a story before we get ready to change, but people think that Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves, but it was actually the slaves that freed Lincoln.
Right.
The slaves freed Lincoln because Lincoln put it out there to, and matter of fact, Reverend Sharpton says it, because Lincoln was looking for more manpower in the war, the Revolutionary War. And so I think he was confronted with the aspect of how can he get more manpower. And Frederick Douglass told him, what you do is you make the slaves' freedom contingent on participating in the war. If they participate in the war and they can get to be free, then you'll win the war. Which is exactly what he did. Exactly what he did. So we smart people. We can figure it all out. So I encourage you, in about a half an hour, look at your schedule, because I'm serious about this. What we need to do, and we can invite more people on the dialogue and consider what our next steps ought to be and what we can engage in.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you. You have my email, so you guys
Okay.
can.
Okay. Very good. Okay.
Good.
Mr. Michael.
Thank you. This was great.
Thank you. Mr. Michael, please tell us. You've been on for a little while, and I appreciate your patience, Mr. Michael Wynn. Share with us, please.
Okay, I have enjoyed listening to the conversation, and what's become clear to me listening to the conversation is how each of us are called for a specific purpose. As I've listened to all the conversations, whether Jim Crow, entrepreneurship, media productions, the internet, having an insurance agency or writing a book, the common thread is education. So that's my purpose. The purpose that I've been called for is to enhance and increase the education of our children. And I've been doing it for the better part of my adult life. I won't go into a long background, but my name is Michael Wynn. I live in Marietta, Georgia, and I'm a product of Chicago Public Schools. After leaving Chicago Public Schools, I attended college at Northeastern University. And at my high school in Chicago, we had 500 ninth graders, 50 graduated 12th grade, and 15 went on to attend college or university. So over the scope of these many years that I've been out of school, I have published 40 books that have been focused. They have all been focused on increasing educational outcomes, expanding college access, and using scholarships instead of student loans to finance a college education. So what do we know about where we are with Black children in America these many years since I have left Chicago Public Schools? Black children are performing lower than every other demographic group in America, including Native Americans. Literacy, both in reading and writing, is low, which translates to voter participation, which becomes low. Course taking, standardized test scores, every possible measure of how Black children are performing in public education is low. So what I have done in my work is I have written books on parenting, learning styles, study skills, learning strategies, career and college planning. And I recently published a 4-set series of books on HBCUs, anchored by a book, HBCU Scholarships and More. The other 3 books, HBCU STEM Pathways, HBCU Healthcare Pathways, and Why Attend an HBCU. Because here is what we know about this one particular demographic in the Black community, Black boys. I wrote a book years ago on empowering African-American males. I have since had 2 sons who have both gone through school and now into their career. But what we know about Black boys is that disproportionately they attend school pursuing professional sports careers, despite the fact that they have a 1 in 10,000 chance of being drafted by a professional sports team, and they have the lowest college graduation rates of any demographic group. So when we look at this entire picture of all of these things, as it relates to the education of our children, it requires that we be engaged in K-12 education, that we guide them in terms of their post-secondary pathways, and specifically when it comes to HBCUs, the United Negro College Fund reports that 8 out of 10 Black students attending an HBCU are doing so with student loan debt. We can change that if we engage in a conversation much earlier. The reality of Black children in America, and those particularly who apply to HBCUs, is that they will use the Black Common Application to apply to 50 HBCUs. They will then sit back and wait to get their acceptances to their HBCUs. And then when they receive their financial aid award letters, which around this time between now and late March, going into April, when they see that they have not received enough scholarship money to pay for any of those 50 colleges, then they will raise the question, I need scholarships, what should I do? This is planning backwards. The planning process they should be engaged in, the planning process that I engaged my children in, is that when they started elementary school, they were thinking about, how am I going to pay for college? So then if they were a musician or an artist or an athlete or a great academic students with high grades and test scores, the pathway was developed long prior to submitting the first college application. So that summarizes the work that I do. The problem with the work that I do is that we still do not have a mindset in public education as it relates to Black students to put them onto scholarship pathways. The mindset that we have in public education is to prepare them for a career or to go to college. We often, largely in public education, we don't care whether or not they can pay for college whatsoever. So for example, Mr. White, he mentioned receiving his MBA from Columbia. Well, the reality of Columbia and any of the 8 Ivy League schools is that if you come out of a low-income background where you qualify for the Pell Grant, you can get a free education at any of the 8 Ivy League schools. Our children don't even know what the 8 Ivy League schools are, let alone developing a plan to actually get into one of them to get that scholarship. And the final point that I make, because I'm currently writing a book for athletes, is that Ivy League schools, the military service academies, and D3 highly selective liberal arts schools, the one thing they all have in common is that they cannot offer athletic scholarships. But the other thing they have in common is that if you can get into any of those schools and you're poor, you'll get a free education without student loans. Most of our boys who are playing high school sports don't know anything about that metric or that opportunity. And we're not doing anything within K-12 education to at least expose them to the information.
That's a good point, Brother Wynn. But however, many of the Ivy League schools don't have any real athletic teams people want to play for. But, but the idea being that—
Oh, wait. I didn't quite understand the
Okay,
total comment that you made.
Yale doesn't have a great football or basketball team.
Okay, all right. So let's look at the point that you just made.
Okay.
Since only 1 in 10,000 of our boys even have a chance of being drafted by a professional sports team, they're not going to college to get into the NFL anyway. So it doesn't matter what type of athletic team they have at Yale, Harvard, Princeton, Amherst, Williams, or any of those other places. The key thing is that our boys have to get an education.
Sure.
And if they can get an education, then they can write books on Jim Crow. They can
Yeah.
be on the forefront of AI and the internet. They can work for the FAA. They can
You know,
start a food
I,
truck business. They
I
can
agree with
do
you.
all of that. So
I agree.
the
I
key
mean,
thread
yeah, it's
is that they
hard.
have to get an education.
Sure. And it's hard for many of these students to understand, okay, after you graduate, what will you do? I mean, now planning is an essential part of it. Like, look at our sports analyst, James Brown. Now, James went to Harvard. He was Harvard educated, and he played a little for Harvard. And now he's one of the U.S.'s renowned sports analysts. And so, and there are quite even Joy Reid. I just found out that Joy Reid graduated from Yale. Yale, I mean, I didn't know that, but the point of the matter is, if you could, and we have to, which means that we have to expand on sharing with our youth and young men and women that get the education, get the degree. And there is a tremendous difference between an Ivy League school and a state-run college, but there's nothing wrong with it. Get an education, as it were, get an education. But the credibility and the renowned credentials that come with an Ivy League school versus a state-run college. I mean, we'd hope that at some point it wouldn't be like that. And at some point we will get there. But you're right. You're exactly right. You force and motivate and get our kids to go to college. Get them to go to college. And you could, even with a 4-year degree.
Well, let me make one comment, because I don't want to be misunderstood in what I'm proposing, the work that I do.
Okay.
Not every student needs to go to college. I mean, I accept that.
Okay.
What they need, though, is they need a plan, whatever that plan is going to take them. So, for example, one of the things that I'm writing, that I included in this book on athletes, are all the athletes like the Williams sisters. They don't have a college education, but they are wealthy and they have brands, because what they did was they identified their gifts and their talents, and they navigated their way with their gifts and their talents into a financial empire. So I'm not advocating that all of our children go to college. What I am advocating is that early in the process, if we can help them to understand their gifts, talents, and their potential pathways, that some of those pathways will lead through college, but other pathways will lead in many other directions. But no matter what direction it leads in, you become educated. Even if you become an electrician, you can't be a dumb electrician. You have to know how to read the manual and connect the current. So if you're passionate about being an electrician, I'm all for it. And if you want to become an electrical engineer, I'm all for that as well.
Sure. But the sophomore year in high school, the average student is asked the most important question of their professional career. At the end, at the point of a sophomore, you're asked, well, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? Now, I mean, you would hope that to the point of freshman to sophomore, you've engaged in experiences or people and become familiar with alternatives. What are my options? And sometimes, just having somebody like you to sit down and tell them, what can I do? What's at my disposal? What am I?
Also understand when you say that's a function also of household wealth. That students who come out of wealthy households, educated households, they're not having those conversations in high school in the 10th grade. They're having those conversations in preschool before their parents are selecting the preschool programs and the elementary schools that they're going to. And for those children, their parents are already planning by 3rd grade the 6th grade middle school classes they're going to take, so that they're accelerated in terms of math and science. Particularly, Black children take calculus in high school at a rate of 6%. And the reason is that most Black children can't get into the calculus pathway in a traditional high school. They just can't. If you start with Algebra 1 in 8th grade, you cannot get to calculus by 12th grade. You have to start in middle school. So those conversations have to happen much earlier. And the problem that I have, and I do have a problem, my wife would say I have many, but the problem that I have is that when we know this as educators, that this is a function of wealth, and that most Black children are attending urban schools in high poverty communities, if we know this, then the least that we could do would be to introduce the information to them. Not whether or not they do anything with it, we would introduce it. We do that athletically. We don't
Yeah.
wait to 10th grade to talk to a boy about what he needs to do to be a star athlete. We start with Pop Warner football by 3rd grade and
That's true.
AAU track and field by 3rd grade.
Yeah.
It's just academically, as a
Yeah.
community, we're just failing Black children educationally.
Okay. So what do you think? What are the outstanding objectives that, because you're right, we are. How can we help our kids and youth pursue more alternative options or consider a better planning strategy before they
Every
get
single person that I've listened to talk today has all that we need as a community. If this entire group of people who are on this went into a school, we would bring so many different experiences and dynamics in terms of our life plan and our life experiences into a conversation. But in order to do that, the Black people who are running the school, the superintendents and the assistant superintendents and the principals and the coaches, they have to want to hear our voices. They have to want to look beyond feeling sorry for children in poverty and listen to the stories of people who have come out of poverty, who are doing wonderful and extraordinary things. I mean, that's a simple thing. It doesn't require new curriculum. It doesn't even, no matter what is happening with the Trump administration, our children are going to have to be educated. No matter if every HBCU gets shut down, our children are still going to have to get into whatever schools are remaining. When they stop the affirmative action, that doesn't mean that all students still can't get into Columbia and Harvard and anywhere else. It simply means that they're being held to a different standard than perhaps they were the day before. But if they know the standard, see, that's the thing. When it comes to athletics, our children clearly know the standard and they meet the standard. They know what their vertical jump has to be. They know what their 40-yard time has to be, and they meet the standard. So academically, if they know what the standard is and they have the people who care about them to help them, they'll meet the standard.
I agree. But because of a youth, a 14-year-old kid understands that, listen, I need to get at least 1100 SAT score, or I get my GPA up to 2.9 or 3.5, or have read all the major author plays. And, if that's a standard that we change or adjust. And even whether you go to college or not, those are very good credentials.
But also, it's important to know how the system is rigged against us. And I'll take the NCAA. The NCAA standard for NCAA eligibility has continually to come down every year because colleges make money off of Black children who play sport. So the current NCAA standard is a 2.3 GPA, and you don't have to take the SAT or the ACT. So that's saying to Black children, look, as long as you can run fast, jump high, we don't care what you do in school. You just don't fall asleep. Just do the very minimum, and you will be able to make some college billions of dollars.
Right, that's interesting. But the billions of dollars will not get you a degree. No. There's no standard for that. That needs to be changed. Now, I'm sorry, I don't mean to hog the conversation. Any other questions? Because clearly, Mr. Wynn has a very some very unique conclusions about things. But I really appreciate you, man. I mean, we have overlooked this area, the Neat territory, for a long time. So, anybody else in our community or group and have questions for Mr. Wynn?
So, Mr. Wynn, what city are you in? Where are you?
I'm in Marietta, Georgia.
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to talk.
Yes, sir. I'd like to talk to you. I got your website open with your book.
Okay.
We need
as a matter of fact, I have Mr. Patrick's website open. I have the food truck website open. I'm waiting to hear from Harold so I can open up his website.
See, but actually, though, Mr. Wynn, you're in Georgia. We need to get you up to Chicago.
I'm gonna be in Chicago in, I think it's April, speaking to athletes. So I love to. There's an opportunity to come by and see you.
Well,
Good.
actually, we talked about it earlier. How can we get 20 of you? 20 of you like that. 20 of you to do what needs to be done throughout the country. Because there are 40 million, 40 to 50 million African Americans in this country. Now, and if we could kind of change the numbers to 20%, I mean, and then if the 20, if we can increase those numbers to 20% more, plus consider the prospect of reaching across the waters to get more African Americans. I mean, because that's one thing we don't explore. I had a good friend who went to law school in Michigan, University of Michigan, and then got a medical degree in I think Nigeria someplace. Now I don't know why, and they accepted him, but the point of the matter is we have to explore doing business in other countries, getting academically trained and developed in that like that. So I'm just talking. Anybody else have any other questions?
Well, I do have a comment. First of all, was a great presentation. A lot of good information. I look forward to reading some of your books. I want to make I want your opinion of this. Personally, I have worked with kids, I guess, for the last 15 years. I actually stopped around the time of the pandemic. And usually I would have maybe 100, 125 young African-American males in my mentoring program throughout the year. And one of the major things that I found with them, problems, was lack of interest, just no relationship whatsoever between why they were there and being able to leave and be a productive individual. I mean, that was a major task. And I did things like bringing in people from the community to conduct workshops and all kinds of stuff, and exposing them to things that generally speaking they would not get exposed to. One of the things that I still feel that should be done is that the school systems need to be totally revamped. Do we really need 12 years? Do we need 3 years of 4 years rather, of high school? Do we need, I look at the Philippines, for example, they have a 96 point something literacy rate. In the Philippines, they produce engineers and nurses and other technically professional people. But they don't go to high school for 3 years. I think eliminating a year of high school can make a big difference for those students, for example, who are not going to go to college. As an example, there are a lot of certifications. There are a lot of technical certifications that a kid can be trained to pass to get the certification so that they can get an entry-level job. And some of those kids can then, maybe after having some experience in the industry, can then go on and decide to get a degree or advanced degree, whatever. But the important thing is that those kinds of opportunities can be better done in an environment where there's less time for kids to really, in my opinion, goof off. I mean,
Okay, so
4 years.
if I could respond to two things.
Mhm.
Because in the work that I do, I try not to focus on system changes because that won't happen in my lifetime. So focus on
I don't know.
what do I see that's in front of me. So here's what I see that's in front of me. It's two things based upon how you describe this interaction. One was a study done by University of Michigan years ago about Black children and their attitude toward learning. In that study, what they found is that there was an inverse relationship between social popularity and GPA within the Black cultural group in public schools, meaning that the higher your GPA, the less socially popular you were. The lower your GPA, the more popular you were. If you're an athlete with a low GPA, everybody loved you. So that cultural construct influenced all the students that you would have been interacting with. Now, there's another component, though. It's W.E.B. Du Bois. He writes about the talented 10. So here's what's always in a group, a large group of students in a public school where they appear to be out of control. They don't want to listen. They're disrespectful. And they basically cause speakers to want to leave and never come back. Within that group is about 10%. That 10% we're not reaching. But that 10%, and this goes to Malcolm Gladwell's work in A Tipping Point, that 10% could become a tipping point for school. That means that if you, the group of children who were there with you, if the principal in that school took 90% of them away and left the 10% who really wanted to listen to what you were talking about, and if you were able to give them the information that could change their trajectory, that when those students become successful, then other students behind them see the success. And I'm going to tell you the failing that we have systemically that we can change. When we have an athlete that is offered an athletic scholarship, we publicize that thing, man. We bring everybody into the gym. We put up balloons and we have a big signing. Even if we only have one D1 athlete in a school of 3,000 Black kids, we're going to let everybody know that guy got that. But you let us have 3 or 4 people go to Ivy League, 3 or 4 people go to mini Ivies, 3 or 4 people get full scholarships at HBCUs. We are going to pretend as though that didn't even happen. We're not going to publicize it because it is an anomaly. But we don't see the athletics as an anomaly. And that is not the fault of the system. It's not the fault of the children. It's the fault of leadership in our community.
Okay, great. This can go on. I tell you what, I mean,
we need to bring everybody to speak,
right,
and then we'll bring you back.
Right. Well, actually, this is a very important time because our president is discussing the prospect of getting rid of the Department of Education.
Yeah.
So that means it could and needs to be rebuilt from the standpoint of doing a better job. But
we'll bring you back.
We'll talk about
these
that.
are important discussions.
Yeah,
So you're watching Discover Brightside. We're in our 6th year of doing Black History Month. As many of you may know, these events are getting fewer and fewer, and we need to keep going. So we want to thank each of you for supporting this event, and we will be back. So make sure you subscribe, write us a comment, tell us, what does Black History Month mean to you? Write it in the chat, write it in the comments. You're watching Discover Brightside.
Thank you, Brother Wynn. I appreciate